something that feels great about taking that mask off. 12 days ago, I delivered a presentation, the keynote address, at a professional conference on implicit bias. And as I looked out at the audience during that 90 minutes, I could tell that everyone was tuned into what we were talking about. It was clear that they cared about the subject. This isn't me, and this isn't the audience. If I'd have just thought ahead of time, I could have taken a picture, but I didn't. But this is illustrative. During that 90 minutes, everyone's attention was totally focused. I had been invited to do this presentation because this group understood that their deeply held values were from time to time being overridden by unconscious stereotypes, by implicit biases, that perhaps the conscious portion, as we're told by scientists who theorize on this, that the conscious portions of our brain can process 40 frames per second, but the unconscious portion of our brain can process up to 1.2 million frames. The portion that's thinking faster is overriding the portion that's thinking slower. And they understood this generally and wanted to talk about it so that they could learn how they think and figure out how to change their behaviors to be better. Well, I mentioned that everybody looked like they were paying attention. This is not a picture of the presentation either, but this is more accurate. Because this is 2020, right? And there were actually only 6 people in the room. The person who was the president of the association, the office manager, the guy running the camera, and then 3 other people socially distanced around the room, and then perhaps 200 people watching from their homes or offices online. And I couldn't see them, but I assumed they were all paying attention. They really cared. This was important to them. They gave up a day to do this. Well, when my presentation was finished, they had a 15-minute break. There were snacks in the back, and the 6 people walked over and grabbed a candy bar. I visited with a couple people that I knew from years ago. And then I wandered out of the building, found my truck, put the key in the ignition, and started to drive away. By the time I got on I-15, headed for home, the 6 people in the room and the 200 people watching from home had probably forgotten 50% of what they had heard. Now, I'm not an expert on memory, but I have a tremendous experience, a wealth of experience in forgetting. By the time I got home, went to bed, and got up and had breakfast the next day, the people in that group had probably forgotten 70% of what they had heard. And now, 12 days later, if any of the 206 or so people who so deeply cared about this subject, who wanted to learn about it, who wanted to change their lives to be better, if they remembered 10%, that's amazing. Our brains are like buckets with holes in the bottom, and we fill them up with water that's so important to us, but it just all drips out. So how do we turn these kind of presentations that you're hearing tonight into something that you actually remember? Something that leads to meaningful learning, and something that takes you to a higher level of behavior. Well, that's a question about teaching and learning. And you're on a university campus. This is what we do. And I want to suggest 2 things. Number 1, what we are learning about the brain and understanding is that it's all based on emotion. It's all based on emotion. It's got to matter. It's got to be important. there's got to be some emotional link to you. Now that sentence in and of itself would make for a great TED Talk because it's so vast, but I think that intuitively you know what I'm saying is right. There's got to be an emotional connection so that we care, it matters, and we put in some effort. That's the first thing, make it emotional. The second one is we understand a lot about the best practices of learning and teaching. We apply them every day. We try to incorporate those into all of our classes here at Southern Utah University. The American Association of Colleges and Universities has advanced best practices. We call these high-impact practices. And you can see a list of these practices. First-year seminar and experiences, common intellectual experiences, learning communities, intensive writing, collaborative assignments, diversity and global learning, service learning. There's a whole list of these. I'm going to add one. And the one that I'm going to add is frequent, short quizzes. Not as a means to assess success, but as a means of learning, of teaching, of drilling something into your brain. So let's just take 3 examples. There's a lot, but this is a short talk. So let's go to the first one that I'd like to visit about for just a minute, and that's learning communities. Make it social, make it enjoyable, make it emotional, and make it real. So a learning community is where you get a group together and you explore ideas and issues and you talk back and forth. I'm going to suggest that as you try to become a more inclusive person, understanding your implicit biases and trying to gain more respect for people of different lifestyles and cultures and everything that there is out there, that you create your own learning community. Now, if you're a student at the university, that might be gathering 10 or 12 or 5 friends. If you're an employee, it might be gathering 5 or 10 or 12 work associates. There's some keys to this, though, and that is you can't simply gather 10 people who think the way you think. That's not a learning community. That is a group that reinforces your own stereotypes. So try to find a group that's diverse. If within your group you're all kind of the same, then go out and find somebody that thinks differently, that grew up in a different place, that has a different lifestyle, that sees the world differently than you. If you're on Facebook, don't befriend everybody that disagrees with you. You're cutting off a learning community. So go find this little group, collect a diverse array of people, and spend time studying together. You don't actually have to just be hardcore reading books on diversity. All you need to do is find books and papers and ideas and talk about them. And you'll quickly discover that you all see the world a little bit differently. And go about this with the mind of, I want to understand, I want to respect, I want to grow. And perhaps part of it is, every day you can say to yourself, I'd like to disabuse myself of something that I think I know. I'd like to find something today that I've always assumed was right, but maybe isn't. So go looking to challenge your own way of thinking. But start with the learning community. You'll develop an emotional attachment to people who think differently than you. You'll explore ideas. It will broaden your mind. The second one I want to visit about briefly is study abroad. Diversity and global training. Now, not everybody can afford to study abroad, but you can do things just like it as well as possible. I want to tell you, about 8 or 9 years ago, I went to Congo. It was my first time to go to a country that I knew nothing about, except for a kind of this vague memory about reading about them in the news. So I go to Congo, I go to regular places, I eat in regular restaurants, I talk to regular people. I go to hospitals, colleges, high schools, meet with people in government and business. It was a really fascinating experience to me. I didn't go to the tourist stops. I didn't do all of that kind of stuff. I was never on a bus. was riding in the back seat of somebody's car the whole time. But this is what happened. After I came home, when I saw Congo mentioned in the news, my ears perked up. When I met somebody from Congo, I immediately had a reaction because I had fallen in love with a country and a people. And now every time I heard something about them, I saw it in the most positive light possible. And I saw it in a way that I cared, that it mattered to me because I like those people and I've been there. Don't just simply go to Guatemala and build something for somebody out of service. Don't be a condescending person helping somebody beneath you. Approach it as you are exactly on their level. You can go there and help build something and do service, but make sure that it's not you coming in to save the day, right? You're coming in to learn from them and to assist them in what they need, not in what you think they need from you. And if you can't afford to travel, then it's okay. Just wander. If you go to the same place for lunch every day, go to a different place. If you don't drink coffee, go to the grind. If you don't, all of the things that you don't do, the people you don't know, go to those places and hang out and talk and learn and listen. You have a great time. If you can't even do that, find books, read about other people and ideas. You can study abroad in your own mind reading. The thing that caused me to have the most sympathy for the people in Congo was reading a book referred to me from a friend who lives in Congo called King Leopold's Ghost. And as I started reading book after book after book, I came to really develop an appreciation and a respect and a sympathy for people for whom I knew nothing. And it changed my outlook on life. The same thing happened when I went to China. The same thing happened when I went to other places. And aren't you lucky to be here on a university campus where we have hundreds and hundreds of students from 65 different countries and people from all 50 states and people who have every imaginable lifestyle and every political idea and every other kind of random way of seeing the world. So go out there and study abroad, even if it's only in your hometown. Learning communities, focused study with other people, study abroad, expanding your horizons, and traveling. And the last one I want to mention is this: self-assessments. Give yourself quizzes. We have found that short quizzes that occur regularly lead dramatically to your intellectual growth. You know, if you just listen for a whole semester and then cram for a final exam, you know how this works. Within 2 days, you've forgotten it all. But if you do regular quizzes spaced over time, it forces you to drill the knowledge into your brain in the same way if you're learning an instrument or learning a skill or anything else. It's that constant effort of drilling the information that will lead you to a higher level of understanding, of remembering, learning, and changing your behavior. How do you do this? How do you give yourself self-tests? Well, there's a million ways to do it. You might just decide that you're going to get a whole bunch of little notes that say, quiz, and stick that in your textbooks, in your backpack, in empty pockets, in clothes hanging up in your closet, wherever it is that you might stick them. And then as you go about, you might even put them on your calendar in random spots so that you're going about your day and all of a sudden you look in your pocket and you pull out a note that says quiz. Quiz. How did I behave with the last person I met? Did I seek to understand? Or did I just tell them everything that I know? Did I try to validate that person in some way or another? Just ask yourself these kind of questions, and what you'll find is, over time, you will have drilled into your mind a practice. I had someone call me up the other day, a friend of mine from years ago, and he said, Scott, I'm just calling to tell you that 8 years ago, 9, 10, like 10 years ago, 10 years ago you did something that I disagreed with. And I told you that I disagreed with it. And I just decided that I was going to create a habit of regularly calling people that I had originally told were wrong, but I later thought was right. He said, I'm just calling to tell you that I was wrong and you're right. I just wanted you to know. I thought, holy cow, that's incredible. What an incredible thing for him to do. And it caused me to reevaluate what I should be doing. So look for ways that you can prove yourself wrong. Find people you don't understand and become their friend. Do all those things. Study abroad, learning communities, self-quizzes. You can lead yourself to a great place. What we know is that learning takes effort. You can't watch a person play baseball and be a great baseball player. You can't listen to a person talk about diversity and become a great diversity person. You can't listen to the radio and play the guitar. You have to spend time and devote energy to learning and transforming your life. And that's my challenge to me and my challenge to every one of you, is to focus on the effort, not just listening, but the effort to become better. And take some of these things that I give you as advice, but once you get your learning community, you're going to talk about other things, and you may come up with a million ways that you can really take this and leave yourself a better person. And as a result, everyone around you better as well. Thank you very much. Good luck.